if you don't mind, I'm going to do my welcome again. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the 2021 RDI Conference pre-conference series of events. Today, we bring you an awesome workshop around feminist frameworks and foresighting and futurism. So thank you so much for joining us today. And our presenter and facilitator today will be Alice Ridge from International Women's Development Agency, the IWDA. Thanks, Alice.
Thanks so much, Whitney, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm joining from today, the Wurundjeri people of the nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present, acknowledging that this land was never ceded. If you'd like to also pay your respects to traditional owners, please pop in the chat the country that you're joining from. If you're joining from somewhere in Australia or anywhere around the world, it'd be great to know where we're all coming from today. So welcome, thanks for joining this session on Feminist Futures. So what we're going to have today is quite an interactive session. We've got 3 hours together and we'll be running through some exercises which use sort of futures thinking methodologies to explore possible feminist futures after COVID-19. And I'll talk a little bit more about that project in a minute. But since we've got, so we've got 13 people on the call, which is great. So since we've got a good group, I think it would be really nice to go around and introduce everyone on the call so that we can just hear, who's in the room, where are we coming from, and what brought us here today. So I'd like to invite everyone to introduce themselves, your name, if you're not, we are recording, so if you prefer not to give your full name, that's fine. If you're joining from an organization, let us know, and what interested you about the session today. So I'll open the floor for people to introduce themselves, and if it's a bit slow to get started, I'm going to start calling on people, but hopefully someone will jump in and introduce themselves.
Hi, maybe I'll start off. I'm Dixon. I'm currently studying at Murdoch, and I'm really excited for this session because I feel like I'll get a lot to learn from this session and hopefully try to use that information when I go back to my home country in Bhutan. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Thank you for having me.
Great, welcome.
Good afternoon. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Lauren. I'm from Women's Health Goulburn Northeast, a gender equality organisation that works in regional Victoria. And I'm really excited to be here today to learn about futures thinking and participate in a visioning exercise with you all. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you.
I'm Sok-Len Kieng. I'm originally from Cambodia, but now I'm in Melbourne. I'm a student for agriculture master degree in Melbourne University, and I'm interested in women in agriculture, actually. Yeah, like how they are suffer after, like during the COVID or after the COVID. I just want to learn, especially matching between gender and agriculture. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Amar. Please call me by my middle name. And I'm currently studying at UQ, studying development practice. And the reason why I'm here actually because I'm very interested in feminist thinking and practice. And that's in fact one of my research focus in gender and politics. And I'll be presenting a paper on the 2nd of July, and it will be pretty much related to the topic we're discussing today, hopefully. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Great, fantastic, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Isaac Dixon. I'm a master's student at UQ. I'm currently doing my master's in environmental management. I'm also presenting on the 2nd of July, and my presentation focuses on the marginalisation of women in Southeast Asia and the Pacific in terms of marine resource management, and about the vulnerabilities that women face in those areas due to climate change, among other factors. So today I was just really interested to expand my knowledge on the topic and hopefully learn a few things.
Hi, my name's Frances. I live in Perth, West Australia. I'm currently doing a PhD on gender transformative approaches in the Pacific. So yeah, this topic is close to my study area, so I thought it would be very interesting to hear about it. Thanks.
Great, welcome.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm actually an Australian award scholar studying here at Central Queensland University. I do have a background in environmental health science, but I'm currently studying an undergrad on forensic sciences and occupational health and safety. I am from Papua New Guinea, from the smallest island province of Manus Island. As a Papua New Guinean, we're also part of the Pacific struggle in terms of a lot of challenges within our region. The whole reason I decided to join this forum is because I want to gain from a lot of the presenters and as well as other participants how best, as not as a Pacific Islander, but as a native islander, come from a very small island province, on how basically with resilience in terms of many challenges, climate change and the political landscape as well that is affecting our region and our country to be specific. So that's the whole reason why I joined. And I'm great to be part of this forum and I'm looking forward to learn and contribute as well. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, thanks for being here.
My name is Jess Fernley and I'm based in New South Wales in Bathurst. I'm currently studying my Masters of Global Development, so this is very close to what I'm studying and very interested to hear about the topic today. So thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, my name's Jared. I am a Master's student for International Development. And I'm also a social worker, and I guess feminist thinking has framed a lot of my work and most of my study as well. So I'm really interested just from that perspective, but also I've just sort of more recently become aware of the idea of futurist thinking and foresighting, and it's something I find really interesting. So really keen to be here.
Great, welcome.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Ruby. I'm really happy to be joining you today. My background is in sort of supporting feminist movements, in particular in the funding and philanthropic space. I co-led an organization called FREEDA, the Young Feminist Fund, for about 7 years. And in the last year and a half, I've been doing consulting and sort of accompanying different women's funds, organizations, feminist movement-led organizations in different parts of the world. And yeah, I've done some feminist kind of, future planning before in some of those spaces with AWID and others, but I'm just super interested to hear this and to learn more about the methodology and be part of the process. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that's everyone from the original people, but I think we've had a couple more people join the call while we've been introducing ourselves. So I might call on those people. We're just taking a moment to introduce ourselves, your name, if you're happy for that to be on the recording, and where you're joining from, if you're studying, working, just your interest in joining the workshop today.
Hello everyone, my name is Sring Pamo. I just completed my master's program at the University of Western Australia. I'm just waiting for my graduation and I'm excited to be part of this conference today.
Great, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Hương and I'm working for K International in Vietnam now. I'm working like on researcher and advocacy specialist. And for Care International in Vietnam, our program, we mostly focus on the woman economic empowerment, gender equality, and all the activity to support for gender equality in Vietnam. Nice to meet you all, and this is my honor to be here and join the workshop. Thank you very much.
Great, welcome. Anyone who hasn't introduced themselves yet?
I think quickly, I'm Whitney from the RDI network, and I'm excited also to join, not only as helping as co-hosting and co-facilitating, but also just because I think futurism and foresighting is very exciting. So I'm very excited to learn how to apply some feminist frameworks to it.
Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. It's great to have a real spread of places that people are joining from. Often it's where, you know, everyone's in Sydney, Melbourne, and so it's really great to have people coming from different parts of Australia and the region as part of this conversation. So thanks for choosing to spend your time with us today. So as you know, we've sent around some information about the workshop and Miro, the platform that we're going to be using. So we'll dive into that in a minute and get started. But I wanted to just do a quick centering exercise. So just an opportunity to focus, take away any other distractions, and just bring ourselves into this moment. So I'll invite you, just wherever you are, wherever you're sitting, try and put your feet down on the floor if you can, maybe close down your eyes, put your hands in your lap, and just take a moment to take a few deep breaths. And as you're taking some deep breaths, turn your head over to your right shoulder, stretch out your neck, and come back to center. And turn and look over your left shoulder. And back to center. Look up to the sky, tilt your head back. And back to the center. And drop your head down onto your chest, stretch out the back of your neck. And come back up to center. And just take a few more deep breaths here. When you're ready, open up your eyes and let's get into the workshop. So I'm going to put a link into the chat box to a Miro board. So if you click on that link, it will take you through to Miro, which is the platform that we're going to be using for the workshop today. I've also popped in the password there. So when you click on that link, it should just ask you for a password, which is RDI 2021 ! So hopefully we will start to see people coming into the Miro space, and you should see some big pink text in the middle of that opening frame. So great, I'm starting to see a few people coming on board. I saw that a few people used the practice Miro board to start learning how to use Miro, but we'll take a few minutes here as well to make sure everyone's comfortable with the technology and knows what we're doing. So if you're clicked into the space, you should be able to see big pink writing that says, "Welcome to Imagining Feminist Futures After COVID-19." And you'll also see some sort of a semicircle above that writing of cards, which are Feminist Futures Principles. So as you're getting used to the space, have a read of those principles on the board. Oh, great, Whitney started screen sharing, so you can also see there on the screen what hopefully you're seeing in your own browser as well. I can see about 8 or 9 people have managed to get in so so far. That's great. I think we're up to 10. So yeah, take a moment to scroll around and start having a read of those Feminist Futures Principles while we're getting everyone ready and into the space. All right, I think we're up to 11 now. So is anyone having trouble with the link or getting access into Miro?
Hey Alice, sorry, I'm just, I put in the password, but I'm just not getting through. So need your bit of your assistance there.
Yeah, no worries. So is it asking you to log in, or is it asking you for a password to access the board?
I punched in the password, but it's kept saying that probably the wrong one or something.
Okay, so it should be capital letters RDI 2021 exclamation point. Is that the password that you typed in?
I think I missed the exclamation mark. I'll do it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else having trouble getting in? I'm just going to let the silence sit for a minute just to make sure that that no one needs a bit of help. And yeah, if you're in the Miro board already, then yeah, just take a minute to read those Feminist Futures Principles. Excellent. All right. Well, it seems like everyone is getting into the space, which is fantastic. So while you're having a read of those principles, I'll tell you a little bit about the workshop today. So you'll see if you scroll down in Miro, you'll see an agenda for the session that we're going to run. It's a 3-hour workshop, so we'll have a bit of a break about an hour and a quarter in, just so that we don't get too tired looking at the screen. But what we're going to do is a couple of main exercises using a set of global trends, and then doing some analysis of those trends, bringing our own context, our own experience and understanding to that information, and then starting to play out what might happen with those trends over time through a series of exercises, including the futures wheel, and then some other questions to help us identify feminist future scenarios and then describe them. So if you scroll over, you can see a screen that says about this project. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the broader Feminist Futures project and how this workshop fits in. So Imagining Feminist Futures After COVID-19 is a project coordinated by IWDA with support from actors across the feminist movement. This workshop methodology has been designed for feminist organisations, networks and activists who wish to explore ways that different futures could develop, given what we know now about present day trends, power structures, and our collective desire for a better world. The materials have been designed for a global audience, so we invite you to bring your knowledge and experience to this process by considering the trends, bringing up issues that may have been missed, and contextualizing them within your own experience. There's also a parking lot. If you scroll up to the upper right of this section, you'll see a space with some post-it notes where we can capture any ideas that there isn't, that don't sort of fit into the workshop format, but you want to record and remember to take forward in different ways. So after the workshop today, the Miro board here will be captured as a PDF, which we'll share back with everyone who participated today. And it will also be published online alongside the outputs of the other workshops that we're running for this project to help to try and build up lots of diverse pictures of what feminist futures could look like. I'm also going to be reporting back in another session at the RDI conference to share the outcomes of this discussion with that broader audience as part of the conference. So if you have any concerns about the way that the materials might be used, please feel free to speak to me or send me an email afterwards. And I will share the Miro board with everyone here before we publish it, just to make sure that there's no identifying information. And then finally, I'd like to invite you to come today with the principles of respect and assumed good intentions for everyone here in the space today. Please remember to create space for everyone to have their say, including people who might not be working in their first language or have other access requirements. We really want it to be an inclusive discussion and one where everyone's perspective can be heard. So the hope is that this methodology can support us to explore new ways of thinking and consider new possibilities for multiple feminist futures in our post-COVID world. So we're going to just make sure that everyone, sorry, I'm just trying to scroll on my screen. Great. All right, we're going to just do a quick exercise to make sure everyone is in Miro, understands how it's working, and seeing the all of the functions. So if you want to scroll down, you'll see a frame that's labeled number 3, and it's called "What Does Feminist Futures Mean to Us?" Great, and I can see people clicking through and finding it. So what I'd like to invite everyone to do is double click on one of the post-it notes here and write just your first name and a couple of words that describe what feminist futures means to you. And once you've done that, you can also change the sticky note to your favorite color. Excellent. All right. It looks like everyone is in the right place. Fantastic. And great. So we're starting to get some ideas coming up. Feminist futures are intersectional, centering women's voices and experience. It's about equality for all. Sustainable development. Fantastic. Oh yeah, no worries with me. That's great. Systems defined by care and interdependence. Great. Cross-cutting issues, intergenerational, intersectional. Yeah, these are all really important principles. Adapting with a changing world to promote women's participation in the development agenda. That's great. This idea of change and adaptation is really, really critical to futures thinking. So we'll definitely be exploring that some more in this workshop. Disrupting and uprooting patriarchal norms. Great. I like that idea of uprooting. Cool. All right. It looks like everyone's finished typing their feminist futures. Oh, please help. What's going on? Tell us. What are you struggling with?
I'm messaging Kensho, so I'll see if I can help them as much as possible and see if they can get back on the Miro board.
Brilliant. Thanks, Whitney. Thank you. All right. So thanks for sharing your ideas about feminist futures. So what we're going to do now is scroll over to the left-hand side. You'll see here this section called trends. So this is these are the main prompts that we're going to be working with in the workshop today. This series of trends that have been identified out in the world. So I think a lot of people are still looking at the other parts of the board. If you scroll over towards the left hand side of the page, you'll start to see this list of trends. So let me give an explanation for this part of the activity. So trends are the global forces which shape our world in complex and impactful ways, both today and in our collective futures. Trends provide us with spaces to consider new opportunities, surface risks, and provide a critical lens for examining our world as we aim for a more preferable future for all. So the trends that are listed here are global and they're not exhaustive. They've been identified by a team of futurists who helped us design this workshop methodology. But they are, they're only a subset of things that are happening out in the world today. And they might look really different in different contexts. So what we're going to do is go into some breakout rooms now to have a discussion about some of these trends and start putting them into context for how you're seeing them play out in your work, in your research, in your activism, and what that might mean for a post-COVID world. You'll also see here there's a list of privileging forces. So these are established power structures within society that hinder equal progress towards feminist futures. So you'll see concepts here like patriarchy, like classism, ableism, racism, capitalism, funding levers, the way that different work is valued by funding institutions. So what we're going to do is break out into groups to discuss the trends here, and we'll take about 20 minutes to discuss the trends and the way that they're playing out in different contexts, the way that COVID is impacting on those trends. And I'll give you a prompt to take the last 10 minutes to think about the ways that some of these privileging forces might be coming with the trends that you're discussing. So how are things like patriarchy and classism interacting with the trends that you're talking about, whatever they might be? Obviously, there's quite a lot here, so it's all a conversation starter and a prompt. You don't need to get through, every single privileging force, but they're here to prompt you to start thinking intersectionally and in terms of power, the way that different power structures are coming into play with the trends that we're talking about. So, Whitney, how are you going? Are you ready to put people into breakout rooms?
Yes, and I was just, now that we've got about 13 people again, back to 13, we're going to have three people per 4 rooms, or do you want to have bigger rooms and just go for 3 rooms?
Let's go for 3 rooms in case people have to drop out. We don't, we want to make sure we've still got enough for the groups to keep going. So let's go for just 3 breakout rooms. If it's possible to name the rooms to align to the colours, that would be great.
And that too.
Fantastic. All right. So Whitney's going to pop people into breakout rooms. I will.
Oh, sorry.
So should we create a mirror for ourselves, for our team?
So we just need, we're in the blue, I think we're in, let me just check. We are
green team.
We are green team, yes.
Yes, we're in the green team. So we go to the green bubble. And we will talk about how do you think these particular trends, so the economic, social, economic trends are going to work, or how do you think, in your particular organization or in your particular workplace or, country, how do you think those are happening? And then whether, COVID-19 has changed some of those trends. And then I think once we discuss that together, we can scroll over to the left and chat about different types of privilege and how that might influence some of those trends that we're discussing. Is that about right, Alice, I think? And I'm sorry to cut you off. I just clicked breakout.
No, that's okay. That sounds good. I'm just popping in to see if you had any questions. Otherwise, I will leave you to it.
All right, thanks.
Whitney.
Yeah.
So when you say we're discussing, that means we're going to utilize the platform in terms of like coming up with, like, say, when we're trying to make comments and stuff, we can always edit onto our bubble, or we have the other box on the further left to actually discuss over there. Sorry, if you can come clear on that, please.
No, that's okay. I think at the moment we're not writing anything, or we don't have to.
Great.
We can just chat. We can just chat. So
that's relieving.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And I guess it looks like the trends that we might discuss is, you know, support sources are drying up. Maybe perhaps with, you know, COVID happening, that there's a more refocus on community. And what do we think after COVID, what the economics and the economy might look like? And certainly, definitely in Australia, I've seen, you know, a lot of housing insecurity during COVID-19, especially for at-risk populations. And I think definitely, I mean, I'm from Melbourne, so I definitely see a huge breakdown in trust, like in our federal government, just because I think during COVID, a lot of the states, you know, did a lot more, I think, proactive work around prevention and restrictions than the federal government. So I think I can definitely see that happening. Yeah, what do you think?
I'll probably share a bit about the support sources drying up. I'll speak as I'm actually an international student studying here, so probably here for a fair bit of a time. I'll be graduating next year and returning home to my country. So I'll probably speak from a perspective of my country, Papua New Guinea. Support sources drying up. Now, our country is similarly with other developing countries. We're also very much dependent on international aids for key developmental issues. Now, one thing I notice is with Australia has been one of our biggest partners in the region in terms of aid. And since Australia is also facing, you know, economic constraints as well, where COVID has brought about, we have now a shift of focus from depending on governmental aids and from donor agency. And we're looking more now focused into empowering community. So we're looking at smaller scale where community can now be able to participate, you know, from the local perspective, and how we can develop resilience in terms of not looking at a broader perspective, but how we can sustain our community in terms of based on what we need, and looking at where we can cut on things that is basically one. So that's probably one of the aspects in terms of support sources drying up. And now we're looking at narrowing it down to community perspective in terms of the bigger and broader aspects. So that's one thing I could probably share from my country, and I'll leave it to my other fellow if they can share something on, yeah, what they have. Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, I'm from Vietnam. So in the case of Vietnam, it's a little bit different. We can say that even before the COVID, the support source to Vietnam is also reduced a lot, given Vietnam claim that we are the middle country with low income, yes, but it's then upgrade to the middle income country. So in that case, we all the source external source support for the development, social development activities in Vietnam declined a lot over last 5 years. Then now, when the COVID, the situation is also become more seriously, and now our government have to mobilize our own support to the to the vulnerable group. And now for the vaccination program, we also have to mobilize the sources from our own people through several different programs. So for this one is clearly that the support for the developing countries is coming down, and the government have to look at the situation, look at that situation, and prepare the national account for the social development activity. So after the COVID, there's something were raised. Such as in Vietnam, we work with a lot of factories, manufacturing factory. Here we focus on the government. We focus on the garment enterprise and some footwear factory. And during the COVID, we found that the workers, of course, in the COVID context, both the enterprise and the worker, they themselves have been infected. However, have been affected. However, worker will be the one who got who at the lowest value chain. That's value chain. So they themselves will be influenced seriously more than the others if we compare with the enterprise. So our survey showed that they actually got many problems for their even basic need. Even they themselves could not meet their basic need for their daily life, like food, housing, and education. That's one. Yes, and several, and also some people they be fully in debt with low capacity for repay the debt. So that situation is require government have to think carefully for the support and then prepare. Although in Vietnam we also have some program to support, but it's not enough at all. And even right now, when the COVID situation in Vietnam is become more seriously, and now our government mostly focus on the vaccination program before thinking of others. So it's understandable, but we like social activists, we also have to think further and see what could be done and what could be prepared for next 2 or 3 years in the case the economic is not really better. Yes, so just want to share some context in Vietnam.
I think we may move to other tape, or just stop talking about support sources dry up.
Oh yeah, we're welcome to talk about any of the topics here, but I think you know, they seem quite linked, because
yep, that's right.
Like Hong said, you know, when your resources are drying up, then your workers, they can't pay rent. They're you know, losing their housing, you know, and they can't even put food on the table. So I think they're quite interlinked, but happy for you to chat about whatever trend you like.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, actually, it's like you mentioned, it's about the link between those value. I think it in terms of agriculture, during the COVID, the supply chain destruction is the main problem for many countries, including Australia, even though there is a developed country. But for my own country in Cambodia, it really tough for the supply chain destruction, which make farmer suffer a lot during this period. I could not imagine for the post-COVID, but right now we are still struggling in the COVID pandemic. Like our colleague from Vietnam mentioned about the lack of food. So we are see in my own country that the farmer could not produce enough food, because not different from PNG, that we are more on developing aid outside from Cambodia. We got a grant to work on that, but during this period, it seemed like those grants are pending, and farmers lack of market. We see like some people at the city, they may don't have food to eat, but most of the food are like the plenty of food are at the farm, and so it wastes of the food because the destruction for transportation that make the problem for our people could not bring food from the farm to the people in the town. So during this period, the community in mainly farmer, they are suffer a lot in terms of the, I mean, because the agriculture as major income for the farmer, in mostly they are still in smallholder farmer. They could not survive without support from the government, from non-profit organization. But the one thing that we can learn from this COVID, the COVID teach us to be independent, because before we seem depend too much on other for imported food, even though we are classified as the agriculture country, but we still import a lot of food from other countries. But this COVID teach us how to be independent in terms of producing food. Yeah, thank you.
That's really interesting, I think. Does that mean when you say, you know, it's encouraging you to rely less on imported foods, is there, I guess, does that help, you know, the economy, like the local economy? Because obviously with the disrupted supply chains and, you know, I think even in everywhere, the economy was quite disrupted when we had to do lockdowns, when we had to do, you know, restrictions and things like that. So does, I guess, does being able to be more independent and rely less on imported foods help the local economy?
Yeah, correct, Vasni. I think it really help to local economy, especially the farmer. It's the encouragement of produce own food, and the people also advocate for the other people to value our own products. The local product is really, it seems like more increasing during this economic, just in my positive perspective. Yeah, I see it's the increasing in value our own local products.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Does anybody else see the same, I guess, a trend in their organizations or in their country? Like, I think for myself, again, I'm in Melbourne, so we've had quite a few local lockdowns, and there certainly, for me anyway, has been a much more focus on local food and local cafes, particularly when we had the lockdowns where we weren't allowed to sit inside the cafe and we had to just buy takeaway or you know, eat outside. And there was on my Facebook groups anyway, there was a lot of support for that, and everybody was always posting about who was the, you know, who was local and who needed help and where we should buy from. So I think that, for me anyway, that was quite positive.
Sorry, Dashan, you go ahead.
Okay. It's okay, Sophie. You go ahead.
No, my sincere apologies.
No worries.
I think like Sokling has, she mentioned, like from my country's perspective, what we did is, we are part of the Pacific region, but the Pacific is shared by 3 races of people. So we are the Melanesians, which is 5 countries, and then we have the Micronations and the Polynesians. So we all share the Pacific. Now, our race of people, which is 5 countries, including New Caledonia, Vanuatu, Fiji, Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea, we have a culture which we have a barter system. If any one of you have heard about that before, this is a very cultural way of life our forefathers have always been practicing. It's like an economic activity, but in terms of money as a medium of trade, we trade goods and services, vice versa, depending on which part of the country we're from, the island, the mainland, or the hinterlands. So that's what we've done now since COVID and the restriction. We've now been trading within our local communities, within our local regions by barter system. So the islanders will bring the sea produce and the mainlands with the land produce, and we just exchange goods and services. So that part of our culture has been lost for quite a while due to modernization. But now due to COVID, we've kind of drawn back and bring that now in terms of being able to sustain basically livelihood, not so much economic activity, but how people can still sustain, going on living in this COVID-19 challenging period. So I just want to add on from my country's perspective, with trade, we basically not really that much. We are concentrating more on local resilience in terms of village by village, and that's what we've been practicing. Thank you so much. And the Chan, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
No worries, Sophie. I was just going to add that because a lot of us come from developing countries, all of the observation made by my friends here are very similar to most of the participants here. And of course, sources are drying up in terms of foreign aids. But I was also thinking that because of the COVID situation, a lot of the opportunities are also lost, not only in terms of financial aid from the outside, like some of my friends said, even within the community, because of the lockdown, the local vendors or local farmers have also been affected in terms of their daily earnings. And I think right now the economic is badly impacted, and then it will take some time to recover. But in the end, I think the overall, I'm not sure what my government is planning to do moving ahead, but this is just my personal opinion and my personal feeling that this COVID has pushed every community and every country out of their comfort zone, which in turn, one of the previous commenters said that we're now going local and we are now looking into what we can do to be independent and then survive on our own, and what things that worked in the past can be reused, and then make sure that we are going to survive in the future as an independent community or a country. So I think it might take some time for the economic to rebuild, but in the long run, I feel like because now every country has seen the worst case scenario, they will be better prepared. So it might result in, in the long term for the economic to actually boost, because you will be well prepared for the future situation. So I just thought I would add that, my personal sort of observation. Thank you.
We still have a few minutes left, I think.
Anybody else got anything to add about that? I absolutely agree that, yeah, Sophie's got, yes, resilience and support. Absolutely. And I guess one of the links to this conversation is that, you know, hopefully, you know, global north countries, you know, in the WHO and all the, you know, are trying to be more supportive about, you know, making sure that local ways are currently using to cope with COVID can stay that way. But how do you think, I guess, how do we continue to support that? Because I mean, sometimes I have a feeling that, especially from my end of the government, is that, you know, once COVID is over and, you know, it seems like there's some kind of date that where COVID will end, that they're keen to go back to quote unquote normal or go back to the original ways. And, you know, for me, I'm personally, you know, I don't think that's something to go back to. So how do we keep supporting and making sure that we don't go back to those old ways?
Whitney, if I can share a bit.
Sure.
Sorry, I talk too much.
No.
Well, one of the things I think is with COVID has taught us so many lessons and so many things that we can actually use it as a positive to actually build us up as like on a personal level and community level. And that is community connectedness and social networking in terms of your family, starting from family unit and your extended family, because in that way, you, like we talk about resilience and support, everyone is now coming back to drawing that from family unit and that extended family and how we can work together to survive. Because often enough, if we look from a national scale, or in here in Australia, you're looking by state, and where we come from, maybe province by province, sometimes you look back at like the trust is no longer there. You cannot trust the government because they say something, they might do another thing. So coming back from that social connectedness in your community, starting from family unit and your little circle of family in terms of extended cousins and aunties, I think when we build that together, we're being able to support each other and motivate each other to survive, not only as individual, but continue on as a community, because it all comes down to, you know, are we going to eventually vanish? I mean, in terms of the death rate that is, you know, all forever going up, COVID is unpredictable. How do we survive? So I think for me personally, I think that brings value back to us as a family unit, as that community, which is the basics, and being able to stand together and face it together with that support we give each other, then we can be resilient and be prepared in the extended community that we eventually interact with. So that is just from my opinion, but I guess my other group members would probably think they have their probably own perspective, but yeah, that's just from me, Whitney. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that? I think that's quite true, and like I said, or like even just witnessing a lot of friends moving back home and to survive COVID. I think, yeah, building up that family unit and community is going to be a big part of making sure we don't go back to the way things was.
Hi, Whitney. I just have an idea, like different from what you are discussing. But to me, what I'm still worrying is about the word independent and sustainable, because the problem might be when many countries think about the self-reliant, independent, and sustain by themselves. What I'm afraid is about like a lack of supporting. It seems like everyone becomes selfish. During this pandemic, it seems like when we're talking about the lockdown, the border closed, yeah, I do agree it's because of the protecting life. But in terms of the business livelihood, if something still stuck by that, if we don't have the clear definition for the self-reliant, independent, something like that, it seems like everyone just protect the resources for our own people, without sharing the resource to the country who really need it. That I see it maybe need more working on how those definition and are clear to everyone, how we can support it after the post pandemic. That's what I want to add for this discussion. Yes, thank you.
Oh, we are, I think, almost about running out of time. So I think that's some great thoughts. And you're right. I think there's some kind of back and forth between community focus and selfish focus and community focus, and it's like the balance is.
Welcome. Cool. Hi everyone, welcome back. I popped into some of your breakout rooms. It sounds like you're having really interesting discussions. So I'm sorry to drag you out. Oops, that's the timer telling me the time's up. We're actually running a couple of minutes ahead of schedule in the agenda. So we don't usually pause here for a report back, but I thought it would be nice just to hear one or two insights from each group about something interesting that came out of your discussion just now before we move into the next activity. So I'll go around and invite every group to share, just something really interesting or an interesting insight that came out of your discussions. And I'll challenge you to share, if you're the one speaking, to share an insight that someone else in your group had. So would someone from the blue team like to share something interesting that came from your discussion just now? Anyone from the blue team?
Jared saying, do you guys want to talk? Say something for Kensho? Oh, otherwise I'll give it a go. Yeah, so Kensho, in the blue team, there are 4 of us. It's me, Kensho, Saring, and Jared. And I think we've covered some trends out of the 5 trends in the decided trends here. And I think there's some discussions, very interesting discussion in the first trend. We're talking about new phases of change. Well, we see how quota policies, for instance, have at some point help or not help, but like provide women more access to politics. And when we talk about women's participation in politics, it's also about how women are being represented in the politics and how they're representing women's voices as well. And because of COVID-19, we can see that because the elections somehow being disrupted, and then the way in which these women candidates needs to do their campaign, and within certain circumstances, we know that women have less access to technology, women have less access to financial support that would sort of reduce their capacity to do the campaign, and that means women would lose seat. But then the thing from Jared was that how this quota policy as well does not necessarily, let's say, disrupt how the politics in the parliament or the political practice has been very masculine, and then so that the quota policies may intervene with or may change the formal law, but that does not mean it would change the informal rules within the parliament.
Right.
And that's one thing about the first strand. I think we also talked something about decentralized networks, like for example, Me Too movement, and how the COVID-19 situation just actually make more people are digitally connected. But we also need to think about those people who don't have access to technology. That means they are being excluded again as well. So that does not change anything. And I think Saring talked about the climate change in Bhutan, and I think the way she in representing the voice of Bhutanese perceived climate change as not necessarily a threat at the moment, probably for the next 50 years, because I think that's also the result of how Bhutanese government have sort of integrated the sustainable development approach in their, I don't know, in their policy. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's anyone from the group would add something more.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That sounds like a really interesting conversation. We might go to the next groups. Would someone from the green group like to share a little bit about what you discussed, maybe just one or two insights that came out of your discussion?
Let me try. Yes. Actually, our group we focus on several trend, and we also suggest to talk suggest another trend focus on supply. We will also discuss some insight on the supply chain disruption. So firstly, we mentioned we talk about support source dry up. It actually the trends in the future. I also share the case in Vietnam when Vietnam upgraded to become the middle income country. So in that case, even before the COVID, the external support is already went down. So when the COVID comes, the situation becomes more seriously. So in that case, our government have to mobilize the sources from different sources, and one of source is important, that is from private sector. So we think that in the future, when for each government, when the external support is become scarcity, so in that case, the private sector could be more important, and the government need to engage them into the process and development agenda. For their support to the social development in the country. Regarding to the supply chain disruption, we also discuss on the case the COVID context when the agricultural products is become it could not be sold, given the transportation interrupt, and also export also could not work. So in that case, the local market will play important role in that case, and that's also required for the upgrading the processing system of agricultural product to make sure that it could be not sell like a fresh, and now we have to turn them to the product that we can keep them longer. Yes, so that's some insight we discussed. and maybe some other member could add more. Thanks.
Fantastic, thank you.
Alice, I'll add on to Hong. Thank you so much. Where we discuss, because most of us, or if not all of us, are from developing countries within the Asia Pacific region. So one of it we discussed was not only like our group members mentioned about decreased reliance on imported goods, but we are now going back and revisiting our traditional practices on how we have been surviving as a people and in our individual local community. And one of that we made a mention of was we're bringing back our traditional way of economy and livelihood in terms, and we made mention of bartering system. Barter is it's a traditional way of exchanging goods and services for the other, and as well as it doesn't probably generate income in terms of monetary gain, but exchanging goods and services in terms of livelihood and how you can survive on a daily basis. We also made a mention of briefly on self-reliance and independence as a community unit starting from family. And COVID has brought along a lot of challenges, but how can we be more resilient and independent in terms of strengthening that social connectedness and network in terms of unit and our circle of friends, basically in whichever community we are from, and being able to survive together through encouragement and social support. But having said that, we also questioned there is a fine lining between the definition of self-reliance and independence and the clarity of, is it community focused, or there are also the downsides of selfish focus to it as well in terms of this COVID period. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Fantastic. That sounds like a super interesting discussion. And I'll just share really quickly. I was looking at the news while I was waiting for people to come out of breakout rooms, but I saw a really fantastic article about a local community in Peru who are rebuilding a bridge that fell into disrepair during COVID, but rebuilding it using traditional methods. So weaving a bridge across a ravine, which is really incredible. And I love that idea that actually feminist futures can come from traditional practices. So it's a return to, traditional ways of living in community, of working together, of using resources more sustainably. I think there's some really interesting ideas. So I love that idea of returning to traditional bartering and other traditional practices from COVID-19 as a expression of feminist futures. Thanks for sharing that. That's really cool. All right, Pink Team, would you like to share just a couple of quick reflections from the discussion you had? I can see lots of post-its, so you've captured heaps of it already, but yeah, just a couple of quick reflections.
I think that Ruby would probably be more articulate than me, but one interesting thread that came out of what we were talking about was, and it seemed to cover a lot of the different trends on our panel, was that there seems to be while we have seen during the pandemic that social media has certainly brought a lot of the issues that we've all talked about to the fore and really highlighted some of the inequalities that exist in our communities, there seems to be a real disconnect between people's awareness of this and organisations and governments being accountable and actually taking tangible action on these things. So certainly when we were talking about our accelerating racial justice segment of that graphic, we were saying that, and Ruby really put this well, and I hope that Ruby will chime in and take herself off mute to describe it better than I will, but Ruby was saying that while there are a lot of organisations that have recognised the need to centre Indigenous voices, for instance, in Australia, in the way that they do their strategic planning or create policy, often that doesn't actually result in planning or policy or action that is genuinely and authentically reflective of the needs, the desires, the experience of those communities. It was just an interesting insight. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that awareness has sort of gone faster than the accountability. Thanks, that's really interesting. So what I might do now is just take a few minutes to explain the next activity that we're going to do, and then we'll take a quick break before we jump into that activity. So just to give everyone a chance to make a cup of tea, go to the bathroom, whatever you need for 15 minutes. But I'll explain this activity first, and then you can sort of mull it over during the break as well. So if you scroll across back to the right, you'll see this space called Futures Wheel Explanation and Example number 5. So this next activity that we're going to do will be taking one of the trends that you discussed in your group and mapping it onto a futures wheel. So let me just bring up my explanation here. Okay, so futures wheels are spaces for exploring multiple possibilities and mapping change over time. So they map the impacts of a particular trend over future years. Some of those impacts are positive and some of them might be negative, and there can be multiple impacts at each level and which don't have to exist in the same possible future. So the idea here is that we're following different threads, different ideas about where a trend might go in the future, to try and identify, well, what looks positive? What do we like about this possible future? What are the negative outcomes that we could see? And later we'll start to think about, how can we direct towards those more positive feminist futures? So the way you're going to fill this out in your groups is to choose one of your trends and put it in the middle circle here, the dark black circle, and then start with the darker circles, the more immediate impacts, to think about, well, what might happen because of this trend in the next couple of years, maybe next year or the next 3 years. And then as you move further out towards the edge of the map, how are those trends continuing to play out over 5 years, over 10 years? So the example that you can see here that's been filled out is this trend, backlash against women's rights. And you can see that it's been played out in lots of different directions. So because of a backlash against women's rights now, we might see in the next few years a renewed push for equality legislation. So governments trying to respond to this backlash by making more laws that favour gender equality. Over time, that could lead to a political stalemate, because you could see different factions within governments who support or oppose rallying their supporters and meaning that progress doesn't happen. We're not able to get those laws passed. We could see token political concessions. So maybe focusing on the things that seem really easy or the surface level problems rather than really getting to the more structural issues. Or this example, which is a bit more extreme, we could see new legislative blocks forming. So all of the women across every political party might decide, we're done with this, we're voting together. Parties don't serve us anymore. We're going to form a new women's caucus, and that's how we're going to vote on this legislation, which could lead to a total collapse of government. So obviously that's a pretty extreme outcome, but I think it helps you see how the futures wheel can sort of it can help you explore a trend off in different directions and think about, what are some of the really out of the box things that might happen. So what we're going to do is just take a 15-minute break now. And then when we come back, you'll see further down on the Miro board, there's space for each of the groups to fill out one of these impact wheels. So you can take one of the trends that you discussed in the session before, or if you came up with a new trend, or if you tweaked the trend that you were talking about, feel free to change that on the post-it note. So move that one into the center, and then you're going to start to build out your impact wheel as you think about the impacts of that trend over time. So are there any questions about that explanation before we take a break?
No, thank you. It's clear to me.
Fantastic. All right, so let's take 15 minutes now. Let's come back at 2:30 by my clock. So in most places, that's going to be the half-hour mark, whatever time zone you're in. So yeah, 15 minutes, feel free. Everyone's got their camera off, but just pop yourself on mute as well. And we'll come back together and then go into our breakout rooms to do the impact wheel discussion. Okay.
Recording in.
Awesome. So we'll let's get into the next activity. So as I said just before the break, what we're going to do is go into our breakout rooms and have a go at filling out these impact wheels. So take a few minutes, agree on a trend that you'd like to explore in some more detail, and then start filling it out. So let's open up the breakout rooms again. We'll have 30 minutes to do this activity, and I'll come around again in case there are questions, or if you need some prompting, I'll pop in and out.
Hi. Hope you all had a really nice break. Have you thought about which trend we might like to do? And if you're not familiar or comfortable using the mirror board, I'm happy to type while you all chat and tell me what to type.
Thank you, Whitney. Thank you. I really like the trend that. Thank you, Sophia. When you try, when you have to add some more trend that we discussed. So I really like the traditional way that we will have to come back the traditional way to be more resilient to the COVID. So should we have any other?
Hi, Hong. Yeah. Well, my pleasure. As a team, we must be there for one another.
I don't know, but I agree with you that yes, because that could be great in the context of the not developing country. We can understand, yes, right, and how we can make the people in the underdeveloped country could be more resilient to the shock. It could be COVID, or it may be the other one coming in the future.
Yeah,
so that's great.
I agree. With me, like, barter system is not only one traditional way of resilience and survival in our countries, but I'm pretty sure from each of our perspectives, our countries, like preservation of food, you know, or different agriculture, like Soklang is very much versed in that, like agriculture, like I know we're all pretty much from Vietnam and Cambodia. These are like tropical countries, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, it is. Yes, sure.
We're all in the tropics. So that's pretty much, our land is very fertile. We grow our own food. And I guess in probably Cambodia or maybe in Vietnam, I'm not sure, they probably do it in larger scale for commercial, consumption. Like from Papua New Guinea, most of them, they do it for family consumption. So it's like small gardens, not really like big farms.
It's for Vietnam, but not Cambodia.
Cambodia
is more like a PNG.
PNG, we don't do big traditional, big large farming, in which now we are trying to tell them, you're blessed with a very fertile land. Why not we go into commercial farming and move away from these small little gardens?
Yes, right. Even in Vietnam, when we do the farming, but now we also try to apply the traditional way for cultivation to make sure the safe and security.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's also happened. That's also the trend, I think, in the future. It's not just for developing or developed or underdeveloped world.
Yeah. It feels like even though in Australia the organic food that more expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, exactly. Yes. So maybe we should the trend. We should put something for in the black bubble. What we want to discuss here.
Yep.
Like,
increase local farming and traditional practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yes.
So I was just typing while you were all talking, so that I felt like that was the trend that we might discuss. But if I'm wrong, please let me know. And I'm happy to do all the typing and just learn. You know, I think, yeah, I don't know very much.
You're on the right track with me. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, anyway.
So yeah, I guess to do this particular activity is now, if we're starting with increased local farming and traditional practices, what effect could that have? You know, so maybe for me, I'm thinking maybe there would be more, do you think, you know, the government would be supportive and try to provide, you know, financial incentives to farmers to do traditional practices? Or do you think you know, there might be a backlash or a resistance to doing traditional practices? Like, I know, for example, like my family's from Malaysia and China, and sometimes, you know, just if it's made in China, then we try to avoid buying stuff from China because we don't trust that product. But, you know, so do you think, you know, there might be feelings like that around local farming and traditional practices, that sometimes some people perceive, you know, imported goods to be like a better product or more privileged product? I know for some places, you know, imported goods are definitely a social status kind of symbol. So what do we think?
I would like to add, I think one is, like you said, there could be like room for incentives by the government to support the local farming, also in terms of branding it as a organic food, because organic food is an international brand right now, and it is hot cake actually. So we could do that. And the other thing is trying to integrate traditional practices with the modern technology, because let's be honest, just relying on old practices, we're not going to go far, because we have to integrate it with the modern technology. So I see we also need, with support from the government, we need to integrate these two. For me, I think for now, these two looks prominent.
I agree with Dixon. Given because the traditional practice is maybe not bring more productivity. So if that could frighten the food security, then our food shortage. So in that case, we have to apply the technology to make sure that we make our production is productivity to make sure to secure the food for the population, I think.
I just want to add for that. It's about I just type two here, just make sure that I may not forget when talking. But one thing probably I can remove, it's about the policy incentive from the government. Yeah, I do agree with that. And the other one I'm thinking about the job opportunity increase, especially for women, because in general, the percentage of the women in agriculture are more than men. I remember probably 55% in general, but probably depend on country. But in Cambodia, it's women in agriculture is higher percentage than men. So the job opportunity increase. But the other thing that probably I'm thinking of is about bring back our value to our grassroots or ancestor, like our friend from Sophia mentioned about preserving food, something like that. And sometimes it's when we think about the technology, you guys discuss it, it seems we are move forward. We just think forward. We did not consider backward. So we forget our value. And for this thing, it's time for us to value what our strengths. And even though we can use technology to improve it, but we could not forget our traditional way, our practice that our ancestor live for us, that it can be improving our livelihood, just the way that we try to get all of those good things integrated with our own value. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. I do concur, Whitney. And like I shared with my group members, that when you talk about how you talk about the brand and how the government can come in, we can always try and narrow our market. Like government can support. We can always market and trade within our own region. Like the Asia can keep it within Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. You know, that Asian region. Us in the Pacific, we can also do the market and trade within our neighboring countries like Solomon Island, Fiji. Start from our smaller region, you know, and then from there we can work our way towards the outside, because basically we must know certain countries, they are a bit protective of their markets as well. You can't just tap into it. Papua New Guinea is close to Australia, but we can't import bananas here. That is one fact of the matter, because biosecurity and this sort of thing. But hey, we can probably trade within our own regions. And then that is one way we can also look at local expanding local markets to just our neighboring countries, and how we can trade to help each other. Because what I'm saying is because Papua New Guinea, we have the land and the resource, whereas some of our smaller island countries, they don't have the land to farm. Why not we can just, you know, help each other in that aspect? So that's probably like probably from the agriculture and terms of food product perspective. Thank you, Whitney.
One thing that I want to add is about increased local farming. I'm thinking about the supply chain and value chain of those products. For example, in Cambodia, our struggling is we import input supplies, and then we just use our own labor to produce it. And when the final product come out, it turned to be a high price. We could not compete with other country in the region. So it's about our ability that the farm, government, private sector, and also the community had to, NGO, I think it's non-profit organization, government, private sector, and also community themselves had to work together in charge of the all supply chain, from the input supply until market. Otherwise, we could not increase our local products, because currently in Cambodia, we imported chemical product, seed, gasoline, everything for farming from other country. And that is the problem, that the farmer could not earn any income, because they just pay back to the vendor. And with support from the government, NGO and private sector, those are working together to improve community. Yes, thank you.
I think maybe one of the aspects as well is if the government can provide support in terms of providing the infrastructure, not only in terms of supporting monitoring, but then the infrastructure is build local markets, give us access roads, or it's support in terms where local farmers can be able to come and market their products, or for instance, barter. You're not doing it like, for example, where I'm from, it's a small island, but oftentimes we go to along the beach and we do the trading. Why not build proper facility where it can be able to cater for a large group of people, and a more healthier place to conduct, barter system, because when we're dealing with food, and not to forget COVID-19 as well, so we have to, if they can provide infrastructure which is safe and healthy, then we can be able to conduct, our traditional way of bartering or marketing, for that matter.
Yeah, I just want to add to what you mentioned. It's maybe we may need change from the perspective of our donor to go back for our traditional practice, and also support from bank, because those private sector play important role. If bank provide any support in lower interest rate, something like that, and the private sector also support, and the donor also consider the traditional practice is a better way for improving income or livelihood after the COVID. So I think it's also a good sign that because this one is a system, even though the community want to change, but sometimes if they could not, they still follow what donor looking for. It seems like we have to change for all of every level, all of the actors in the supply chain. Yeah, thank you.
So I think we should have one bubble for the I actually I saw it around here, somewhere here, but maybe we should have the topic that's related to the supply and value chain approach for those products.
Yeah,
it's maybe around on the bubble that incentive from government. It's just one of role of government in the value chain. For government is one of the actors in that value chain.
Yeah.
But here we mentioned a lot. Here we have the government, we have private, we have also the other financial institutes. So all of them, they could be play different role in that value chain, right?
The other thing as well, with me, if we can, in our community, we can be able to start, not really put it in curriculum, but try and enhance how we can pass on these traditional practices to our children, have that support, because now a lot of our, maybe all of us here are from a certain generation, but we have our children coming up, our grandchildren coming up. If COVID-19 is going to be existing for the longer period of time, which is a bit unpredictable, how can we pass on those traditional practices to the next generation? So maybe that community support, or that local government support, or national government support, and how we can be able to pass on those knowledge, whether it be in systems like a barter system or agriculture system, or any form of concept or activity that we have been thriving on, drawing from our traditional practices. How can we pass on to the next generation? So one of it as well is we have to learn how to keep it alive by passing it on and teaching our next generation. And I think one of it will be we have to start probably putting it in schools, maybe, or community projects, or community interactions like women's group, church groups, social groups, sporting groups, or any platform that can give us that opportunity to pass it on. Yeah. So that's something to do when we are looking at how we're going to pass it on and keep that traditional practices alive from generation to the next. Yeah.
Oh, I do agree with this point. It's about the documentation, but the thing is, just want to add it, the component of research and development that plays important role, because example, in my own country, you want to know what is traditional practice, but there's no documentation from the community. They practice different from one to one. So which one it could be scale up? We did not know, because no any official documentation. So probably the component of research and development also important to study all of those practice, and then with a grant support, we can roll it out or scale it up to other communities.
Yep. Well, to be honest, like for me, our communities, especially in our Melanesian society, most of our traditions and culture are passed through storytelling. It's a traditional way where we pass it on from generation to generation through storytelling. And we do that by visual. So you are taken to they reenact the practice, or you're taken to the landmark and it's passed on by way of interacting through words, not really documenting. But I really appreciate it. This is a very good thing now we should move into, documenting our practices and sharing it so that we can have data, or we can have, concept which is we can pass on, where, because for us, storytelling, oftentimes our elders passed away, and they passed away with all the traditional knowledge, not captured and passed. Yeah. Thank you. I do agree.
I have another point regarding related to the climate change. So we maybe have to think of the way to adapt the traditional practice and product. It's also need to think of resilient to the climate change. So yes, it's maybe influence to the productivity, and also sometimes we have to train our traditional practice to make sure that it could be adapted the climate change situation later. Thank you, witness.
It's a hot issue.
Yeah, we do agree. Yeah.
Hi, Alice. Didn't realize you popped in.
Yeah, like Huang has said, is very true, because the quality of our products, especially our traditional food, is not probably the same like 10 years ago. It's depleting in terms of, because there's a lot of biosecurity in terms of food resources in each of our countries. You have diseases and a lot of pest diseases that are coming up that is foreign to our countries and our natural food. So yeah, that is also, we have to adopt in terms of climate change, because there's a lot of challenges in there. Like from an island perspective, our quality of soil is no longer the same like before, because as sea level rises, most of the land is becoming more saline, and you can't grow food crops like before. And also, we are from the tropics, and most times the tropical climate is no longer hot, warm all year round. We always have long spells of droughts and dry spell, and as well as flooding along, longer period of rain. And so, yeah, I do agree with Huang. That is one of the things as well, that as us, as intellect that are actually conversing and participating in this space and being able to get this knowledge, we have to go back and really educate and contribute back to our community and country in terms of these sort of aspects and how we can improve from there on. Yeah. And I do agree. Thank you so much, Hong, for that.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification.
Just want
Great.
to add for the land issue. It seems like I'm not sure in other country, but in Cambodia, deforestation is a big one of the biggest issue. Land dispute, many farmers lost their land, and it suffer a lot because they don't have land for their agriculture, for their farming. So this I'm not so sure for other country, but the land ownership problem, it's quite challenge in my own country. So it's part of like, how can we ensure that the government support local community, make sure that they have they can still utilize their land without provide concession to the private company.
Any can I ask, Sulen? Any difference in the land ownership between men and women in Cambodia?
For Cambodia, in practice, there's I think by law, women and men have equal right if they are spouse. So either you have to register both.
On the
men
land certificate,
husband and wife for the land title. But the problem is in practice, there men still suffer what is called it still have more power
than women,
like selling, selling their land, something like that. Men still have power, even though in their documentation it's both are equal, but in practice it's still different.
Understand. Yes, it's similar to Vietnam. So I think for this point, we may generalize into like a decision making between the intra-power dynamic in the household, right? Because if we the men, they still have more power. Actually, they also have they also is the final person who make the decision, right? So in this case, I don't know, that's point where we should put it, but we should bring it up to make sure that the woman fully participation in to get benefit from this practice, from this farming practice, right? That's one point. Another point also just pop up in my mind related to the unpaid care work. Here there is a point mentioned that it could be increase the job for women, both men and women. But now how women can get benefit from that process? If they still, I don't know, but in some area in Vietnam, especially for the ethnic minority community or mountainous area, in those areas, the women, they still have to take more, spend more time for the unpaid care work, unpaid care and domestic work. So that's one of factor that could be the barrier to their participation in the paid work economy. So if we say it could create a job, but we also, the government also have to have the policy to improve the situation to support women can proactively participate in the economy, right? And then help them to reduce their unpaid care work burden. Or some area, in Vietnam, they still think that for the agricultural cultivation is worker, women and men, they just participate, involved in some specific was a step, in that cultivation. I don't know. For example, Care Vietnam, we have the coffee project, and it seems like a woman who have to take all the caring. Yes, but men they just involved in some concrete step for the cafe caring. So in that case, it's also increase the work for women, right?
Yeah, burden.
Yes. So we have to balance that in that situation. We have 20 seconds.
So for this one, I think just suggest to Sophie for representation.
Yes, thank you. Sophie, please.
Oh.
Yeah.
We're a team, ladies. My pleasure.
Thank you.
I will need your moral support. Thank you so much.
It looks like you've been having really interesting discussions in breakout rooms. I popped in again to see how it was going, and yeah, if you zoom out and mirror, you'll be able to see the futures that each group has been building over their discussions, and they're really interesting. Some really fantastic analysis that we've been doing collectively, and some really interesting pictures of feminist futures. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to not do a report back now. We're going to go straight into another activity, and then we're going to report back after that, because this next activity is going to help synthesize some of the key ideas that have come out of the futures wheels that you've built in your groups. So what we're going to do, if you scroll sort of upwards and towards the right in Miro, you'll see this rainbow coloured set of post-it notes. So there's a series here of questions that I'm going to invite you to answer in your groups. And the idea here is that these are sort of quick fire questions to help you identify some of the really interesting and surprising outcomes that came from your futures wheels, any feminist futures that emerged, any futures that you think, you know, this is the kind of thing that we want to get to, and then start to unpack, well, what does that mean? What had to change in order for us to get to that feminist future? And what might that mean for our work that we're all doing in our own lives? So we're going to go back into our groups now to have that discussion. So we'll have 15 minutes. I'd encourage you, try and move relatively quickly through the questions. They're meant to be quick ones, and just capture any notes from your discussion on the post-it notes there. The last two questions are about the feminist principles that could underpin that future that we want to see. So if it's useful to refer back to the feminist futures that we had right at the start of the workshop when we first came into Miro, there was that set of feminist principles. Feel free to refer back to those, or if you have other principles in mind that you think will be really important in these feminist futures, then feel free to add those as well. So we're going to go straight back into breakout rooms. I'm going to pop the timer back on for 15 minutes to have that discussion. So any questions before we jump back into breakout rooms? Cool. All right, so let's do that, and we'll have a report back after this discussion.
Hey, Whitney, we need a bit of your insightfulness in this one, please.
Hi, sorry, pardon? Do you want me to show you? I'll share my screen again, and this is where we are, and I can do all the typing again. We're green, aren't we? Yes. I keep forgetting. So I guess it's what is there anything surprising that came out of that wheel? So we looked at increased farming and in traditional practices. Was there anything that came out of that discussion that maybe was quite surprising to you or was not expected?
I think to me, it was listening to all of your discussions, and I was surprised how much we could do. I mean, in first instance, it looks like just local farming and traditional practices. What can we possibly do? But then, having listened to all of your recommendations and suggestions, I was surprised that we could do a lot of things from this one topic. So I think for me personally, that was from a little of doing something on our own to a policy level. This topic touches basically at every level. So I think for me, that was the surprising part.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, for me, personally, what I thought was surprising was what we came out of when we were talking about integrating modern practices with traditional practices, and the idea of once documenting traditional practices, then that could be used as a product to sell to other people. I don't know why, but I guess just in my own head, sometimes thinking about traditional practices, it seems to be immune to capitalization and selling things just for selling, so I think that for me that was surprising, that the idea is that we capture all of these traditional things and then actually make it available to, I guess, anyone and everybody, I guess. Yeah, I don't know why.
With me, I think maybe there was a bit of misunderstanding there. What we were discussing, like we're looking at, is how we can capture it, document it, and pass it on to our future generation. No, I understand that so much. We wouldn't want to sell it though. We want to be with our community for our survival here. But we were looking at, like I was saying, we storytell, but then Soklang, so we should really document it, research in, and we can be able to pass it on. So yeah, that was one of the things. As for me, I was surprised listening to the conversation around the land ownership and how women are suppressed in equal participation in terms of owning land. And even though we are married and the couples that they have it together, that they are joint ownership, oftentimes the man dominates and they can even sell the land and the women have no say in it. So we were looking at like government should participate more and get more laws that it should be an equal participation. So for me, it was a bit surprising to see that some of our countries, this is the case. Like for me, we are traditional landowners, so we passed it on by family rights, whereas some countries, this is pretty much what is going on. So that was one thing surprising, yeah, to learn. But thanks to my two group members for sharing it, yeah.
Yeah, we may decide because we use 30% of our time already. Yeah, we just decide to put a few things here and then move to the next one, right?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I'll type and you can all brainstorm the next one.
Yeah.
Did any of those particular things that we brainstormed lead to a more feminist future? I'll let you all discuss and I'll just quickly type.
Yeah. Maybe, I think Huang mentioned about the burden of the women in the income generation activity. Yeah, it like burden work for the women. What do you guys think about this one?
No, I do agree, Stockline, because most times it's us women that we try to generate income. Where there is a gap, we work very hard to utilize whatever little resources we have to generate some form of income or resource within our family. So I do agree with that. Yeah.
I would also like to add, I think it is true, but because I think women are always looked as an overall all-rounder, you know, so men, they only think about providing for the family maybe, but then women, apart from thinking about that, they also have to think about running the household. So even in agriculture practice, it's not just about doing the agriculture work, they also have to be all-rounder and then do everything. So I think, yeah, I do support that. Yes, it is an additional task or additional burden for the female in the community here.
Women are pretty much multitask.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they are probably one of the most resilient human beings on this planet.
So what could be different in the 2030? Wow.
What was the main difference in 2030? I think a genuine return for me. It seems like a genuine return to traditional practices and a preference, you know, over imported practices.
Yeah, and I think one of the things as well is when we go back to traditional practices, maybe we get the good of the traditional practice, but not the bad ones, because some of our traditional practice is the male is dominating one in the society. Yeah, so we don't want that. We would want the positive where one thing I see in 2030 is COVID-19 has brought that significance of women and how we can contribute significantly. And no longer the second best in the family or suppressed, but women are now rising up to the challenge to work together with men to make a difference and to actually support the next generation to come. It's not all about men taking the leadership anymore. Women can now participate and practice in that space. So thanks to COVID-19, the potential of women is now coming out.
Right.
The next one is, what change was necessary to lead to a more feminist future?
I just put two.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's women empowerment, especially in part of the economic perspective, and then high education of the women. That's what I'm thinking for this question. Just add, friend, for this one.
I would like to add another point related to the men engagement and social norm change, which could be hinder the woman participation into the economy or any the paid work activities.
I was thinking that for this part, although I agree, but I feel it should be inclusive, because to have a feministic future, I think men should also be educated, and because it's not only about women empowerment, it's also where men start to understand issues, and then actually both genders come together to work in it. So I think it should be inclusive of both the gender and educate on the matter.
Yes, that's quite similar to what I mentioned. It's like a man engagement here. It could be, okay, we have to raise the awareness, perception, and their participation to support the women as well. The last slide, the last. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Hong.
No, I just, because I haven't seen any, so I am going to move to the final question, isn't it? Or you have any, Sophie? You have any idea to support for the?
I was just like, or you guys, I mean, you ladies have said we should probably move away from those cultural norm and adopt the more modern way of looking into, like you said, participating together as men and women as a partnership. And I agree, not so much women, not so much men, but an equal participation from each and every one of us to contribute in terms of development and resilience in terms of COVID-19. Yeah, too often cultural norm is killing a lot of our development perspective, I should say.
Exactly.
I hope I'm capturing everything okay. So if anything's wrong, please do let me know. I think our final last question is, are there any new feminist principles that may emerge in this future, or in any that may grow less important? For me personally, I think one of the things that came out of it is the valuing of women's traditional knowledge, like preserving food and using, and cooking. Like I can see that becoming more and more valuable, because I feel like sometimes that isn't valued enough in our societies. It's often that's women's work. You cook, you clean, you do all those things. But if we do go back to that, traditional farming, and it does bring economic benefits, then there will be more value and understanding of women's practices and women's ways.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this one too. It seemed like for this COVID, men started to realize that the housework really hard, difficult for the women, because when they are work from home, the kids there, they have to do some work, play with kids, and the kids study, and including the family issues, something like that. It like you mentioned about the cooking, it seems to me like men a bit realize that women housework are really hard, and value non-paid job, like Huang mentioned about. Yeah.
What does the rest of the team think?
Oh, I do agree. I
agree. Yeah, I think because it's the most unappreciated form of work. True. And it's also considered not a work, actually. So work home wives are actually considered they don't have a job, but then actually they're doing more. They're mentally and physically exhausted, but it seems to be ignored. So maybe because of the COVID pandemic, I think people have come to realize that that is not the case. So I think I strongly agree with, you. It's a really good point.
Yeah, more or less, women are better multitask and very, very emotionally strong. And that's what our men focus finally realize they can't multitask like we do.
So great.
Great, we've done it, and we've got 30 seconds to spare. Thank you, team.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Winnie.
Good luck, Sophie, for the presentation.
Oh, gotcha. And I was thinking it would be you.
No, thank you.
I'll try and do my best. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
We are behind you, so Sophia, to support.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Just wait for it to come back in. Great. All right, so we're going to report back from these discussions. I can see on the Miro board some really interesting reflections from each of the groups. So let's go around and share your responses to some of these questions. What surprised you? What kind of feminist futures, or what threads on your futures wheel led to a more feminist future? And what had to change to get to that future, and what were some of the principles that underpinned it? So we might go backwards this time and start with the pink group. Would someone from pink team like to share what you discussed?
Yeah, I'm happy to if Isaac doesn't want to have a go. Let me just find our screen. So the thread that we drew out, or the surprising outcome, I suppose, was more of an interesting thought that emerged from putting all of these ideas together, and that was that a common theme amongst what we discussed was that Indigenous communities' lived experience means that they understand their needs, aspirations, and vulnerabilities better than anybody, and that this should be centred in any action or movement building. And it's very much, I guess, epitomised by this saying, nothing about us without us. Any of the threads on the futures wheel surface, which were pointing to a more feminist future, were perhaps the integration of Indigenous practices and intersectionality in policy governance, and or policy or governance and or governance. And in that thread, the main difference between now and 2030 was we could envisage a complete shift in the nature of our governance structures in line with Indigenous wisdom that centres care and connection to land. So it's a complete reconceptualisation of how we actually operate as a society, and I guess which knowledge is valued compared to now. The change necessary to lead to a more feminist future was the I can't see that screen properly. Acknowledgement of Indigenous knowledge and experience, the value of Indigenous knowledge and experience, and we highlighted all of the feminist principles that we'd looked at the top of the document as being relevant to this, but did think that intersectionality was perhaps a new principle that could be drawn into our thinking around this particular thread of thought. So yeah, I'll leave it there unless Isaac's got something to add.
So that sounds really interesting. I like this idea that actually all those principles are really relevant in different ways. As you were saying that, I was making the connections in my mind of like, yeah, planetary boundaries, that's really relevant to like revaluing indigenous ways of knowledge and building that into governance. And yeah, so I think that's really great. All right, Green Team, would someone from Green Team like to report back?
Hi, everybody.
Go ahead.
I'll probably give it a go. Okay. Sorry, I have a double screen. Yep. So we had a discussion. There's fairly a lot of things we actually came up with. I'll try and probably keep it short, considering time factor. So we spoke about the first point. As you can see, we looked at how many aspects of governance and life that traditional practices can affect policies, and which is required for gender equity. Now, we specifically talk about some of our countries where men have the upper hand in terms of land ownership, even though if by marriage, it's supposed to be our co-ownership, oftentimes men makes all the decisions if it means selling the land. And so women can't make decisions in terms of contributing. If for the matter of like farming or whatnot, they can't do that. And that is one of the very things that is affecting most of the developing countries. We look also at the futures wheel surfaces a path to more feminist future in terms of burdening women. Like women are more burdened in terms of women carry the load in terms of raising a family, providing for a home, and oftentimes that responsibility falls back on the women. Men, they're more into, they look at broader perspective, whereas in terms of family unit, women carries that load. And so we looked at that, and then we talked about what are the ways that women can be valued in terms of when we are contributing in terms of making the next generation aware of our traditional practices. We oftentimes in our community, Indigenous community, we are passed on the traditional knowledge by way of visual storytelling, and it's not fully captured and documented because we live in a modern society, and we talked about how technology can also play a role, but we looked at the aspects of we should be doing more research and documenting those traditional knowledge and passing it to the next generation so that we don't lose it. Also, we spoke about women in economic and education empowerment. We should be doing more awareness in how we can change those cultural norms. You know, a lot of our cultural norms are killing women's potential in contributing. From all of us are from society and community where it's a developmental issues where we have cultural norms coming in conflict with modern ideology. So we're looking at ways where men can be more educated to allow us women to participate in that space in terms of using cultural norms to hold back women's potential, right? Saying that men is the leader and they make all the decision, whereas women have now the potential. And again, thanks to COVID-19, on a positive note, that it actually give us women the opportunity that, hey, men, you don't have to make all decisions. You need women, which they are actually more multitask, very intellect, and they can also bring that to the table and coexist and as partnership in making decisions. So that's one thing we look, especially cultural norm versus the modern ways of looking at things. And then we looked at adopting practices in terms of working together while valuing our traditional ways in terms of farming and food systems. Now, I know a lot of indigenous cultures around the world, we have ways of farming, but specifically to our each community, we realized that we have traditional knowledge on food preservation, traditional knowledge on food farming, and those traditional knowledge, why we are now drawing back and bringing them back, and then we are practicing it, and then we are passing it on to the future generation so that they don't die, but they kind of coexist with modern ways of life. So that's one thing where we looked at, and I think that's probably pretty much it. Oh no, that's the last part of it here. Yeah, we looked as well, the final part of it, we looked at appreciating women's role. And yet again, COVID-19 has brought about that opportunity where women are now emerging in terms of being able to be being appreciated by the men folk in our community, our society, and most of all, specifically in our family unit. A woman who's cooking and cleaning and raising up a child or children for that matter, men often think that it is easy, whereas it's not. And now that working from home, a lot of men are now realizing that no, it's very hard. And they're being more appreciative of women and how they play the role in the family unit. So women are very great at multitasking and they're very brilliant. And we hope that more opportunities could come that men could give for us women to participate, not only in leadership, but also in all aspects of life if we are to coexist in this pandemic period. Yeah, but thank you so much on behalf of the Green team.
Thank you. That's great. I like that idea of revaluing or changing the social norms and understanding around the unpaid work that women do, and that being a critical part of a feminist future, that idea of transforming the social norms at the same time as revaluing traditional practices is really cool. All right, blue team, who would like to share a bit about your discussion on these questions?
Yeah, I'm able to do that.
Great.
That's okay with everyone in blue team. So we focus on decentralized networks, and that sort of come out of Sharing and Kento talking about how an interesting outcome of like greater connectivity that's kind of been perpetuated by COVID in Bhutan has been that, you know, and a greater connection to ideas like Me Too movement and stuff has led to women being more outspoken about gendered violence in Bhutan, and kind of creating a system where, or like a situation where there's greater accountability for particularly men using gendered violence in Bhutan. So a surprising outcome of our wheel was that whilst decentralized networks have like the potential for quite positive change. It needs to be managed well, or it could definitely reproduce existing inequality, particularly around, you know, things like corporate ownership and ideas like that, and how that would sort of perpetuate inequality or just produce the same sort of situation. For our how would it lead to a more feminist future? It was kind of multiple threads of ours combined, would have to combine to lead to a more feminist future, including increased accessibility to networks and kind of equal access to networks for everyone, so that, you know, groups weren't excluded, and rise in connectivity leading to sort of organised movements alongside shifting governance structures. If decentralized networks led to sort of more like greater difficulty for current governance structures to maintain power, then a shift in governance structures that was kind of influenced by sort of organised movements and advocacy from organised movements that was premised by this rise in connectivity, then that could all lead toward a more feminist future, as long as it was kind of underpinned by the right principles, I guess, and the right influences. So the main difference in 2030, I think, was that a rise in connectivity and shifting governance would lead to greater inclusivity and equality. I said we've said of women, but I think a more intersectional lens could be applied to that. What change was necessary to lead to a more feminist future? So we wrote down reformation of policy to ensure positive social change. So I guess that's that idea that decentralized networks can produce positive social change, but, you know, I guess in a current system, it's likely that just be co-opted and sort of used to replicate or recreate the same situation. So, and that, you know, without really being required to sort of, examine or address any inequality. And then we just wrote down as like a little thought bubble, are we talking about radical or transformative change, or are we talking about incremental and like reformative change? And, you know, what's more likely and what's more versus what's going to produce a genuinely feminist future, I guess. Into can incremental change actually have a big enough influence on current, like, more patriarchal systems to create a feminist future? I think you could apply all of the feminist principles, but in particularly we spoke about pluralism, definitely intelligence sovereignty. I think that's a very obvious one that's applicable to this. Examine and challenge power, because I think without that, the decentralized networks, like we've said before, we're likely just to reproduce inequality. And rethinking binaries, particularly because we thought about the accessibility of like decentralized networks and how binaries might exclude people. This was like, we didn't really get to finish this thought bubble. It was just kind of tacked on at the end because it took us a while to get to this point. So an overemphasis on feminism, like redefining what feminism is, not really, like it was, like I said, we didn't really get to explore this enough, but it was just a thought on like, what could a really exaggerated version of feminism look like in the future? And like, will that need to be re-examined and explored down the track?
Good question. Awesome, thank you. That's really interesting. I like this question about, you know, incremental versus radical change, and you know, what's more feasible, what's likely to be more effective, you know, what might be more effective in the short term versus the long term. I think they're really interesting questions. Cool. So, all right, we're doing pretty well. We've got just under 30 minutes to go. So thanks for sticking with us. I know it's a long workshop. I'm just like having a little stretch to re-energize, so feel free to do the same. But we've got one last activity that we're going to do in our breakout rooms before we finish up. And this is the fun part. This is like what we've been working for. We want to paint a picture of what these feminist futures look like. So you'll see just up on the Miro board a space to write up what your vision of a feminist future looks like. So imagine it's 2030, a radical shift has taken place. Maybe it is radical, not incremental change that we need. A radical shift has taken place and a more equitable feminist future has been realized. What does this mean? What does it look like? And what are the ways that it's different from today? So we're going to go back into breakout groups. I'll give you, I think I'll probably give you about 12 minutes just so we have a little bit of time at the end to come back together and share some final reflections. But yeah, write a description. What does your feminist future look like? So let's go back into breakout rooms.
Hi again. So
We actually should brainstorming and then let we need.
Green. So any thoughts? What do we think our feminist future looks like?
I think for me, it would be to do away with the stereotyping, like don't throw like women, don't throw like a girl, or men don't cry. I think these type of stereotypes should be gone in the future. A feminist future should avoid this type of stereotypings.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do agree. For me, men are beginning to appreciate us women, regardless of our intellectual levels. Either we're we're educated to a level like that we are now, or even a simple mother back home. Men are beginning to realize and appreciate what we can do in terms of working together with them and contributing ideas and supporting. So for me, I feel that the tide is changing, the cultural norms are shifting, and their perspective and is now moving towards coexisting, partnership, and teamwork in terms of starting from a family unit. So that's for me personally, yeah.
I also would like to add, I hope in the future we have a shift or a change in the social norm where even in a social aspect or even in it's because of the issues we discussed earlier where there is no more biased policies or biased social norms based on gender. So I hope that it would be basically equity for all. So because right now we still face patriarchal thinking or dominance. So I hope in the future that is addressed and it's equity for all.
Yeah. I also have similar idea regarding the social norm. But one thing just come back to my mind is about how women treat our women. Remember, I was in African country, and then the bias between men and women is high. And then they want equality, something like that. But the problem is when the women they have daughter-in-law, they treat them differently from what they really want. And so for this one, it's unless women themselves have to step up, like change their mind. Example, when I was young, I want this, that. But when I have my own son, and then I treat my daughter-in-law different from what I really want for the women or when I was young. So how can gender equality can be happen if women treat the other women in different way? Thank you.
Oh, that's a really interesting point. Thank you for. We never look. I think as a woman, it can happen a lot, especially in developing and small, where we're not really open. So it can happen, I think, and a lot of in Asian countries, we still, I think we do that where women bring other women down. So that was really interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. It never really crossed my mind until you said it. So interesting point.
It was in when I was in one of African country, and then because women, when they divorced, they lost everything. The men have the ownership for all the asset, even though the children, and then the women just fight for the rights to even though to get some asset or children. But the problem is some older mother-in-law, the one that like they are strict to get everything for their sons. Yeah, that it still, to me, when I heard those stories, I feel really hurt. You know, it seemed like why the women treat other women and put them down when they are just a bit better in the situation. Yeah.
I would agree. No, this is a similar experience, and I can attest to it. Like the other big one is in corporate organization, other women tend to put another women down, and they fail to build another woman up. This competition between us women, it's really destroying another women. Like we women are our own worst enemies. We don't want to see another woman reach their full potential, and we look for ways and means to tear them down. And I think because more often women, maybe like what Sokling had shared, is probably from a family unit, but in a corporate society, I tell you, if there's another women manager there, she would never want another subordinate to actually work their way up the ranks. And they always try to suppress and push them down. And that's because they're becoming more territorial. They're very protective about their job, about that, and they don't want to see another woman succeed as well. And I do agree that we women should move away from this idea of looking down on another woman, and we should really think of how we can build another woman up. Because after all, it's not about you yourself that you can make a change. You need another woman to support and be part of the group if you are going to make a change significantly, and not about one person. And I think that part of women, women, we are very emotional, and oftentimes we just bring out that emotion and let our emotion get the best of us. And then we base it on like, oh, this lady, because she said something negative about me, I will not forgive it. I will make every effort to destroy her life. something like that. So I think we should really move away from that, you know, mentality, and now we should move into helping and building another woman up.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
I actually agree with all your idea here. I just want that both men and women who all gender, actually now we will not just talk about only men or women themselves. So I would like to use it, all gender will get benefit equally from the growth and development, I think, in 2030. That's my vision.
Whitney, we hope it's not too much for you to write, because I feel like the sticky notes is beginning to fill up.
No, it's okay. I'm very used to this program, and I know how hard it is for lots of people to get their heads around. So I'm very happy to type.
We are lucky to have you, Whitney.
No, that's right. It's one of these things, you know, it's, I feel like I've had to learn so many different programs, because now we have to do a lot of video work instead of, you know, seeing everybody in the office. So I just I've had to quickly learn all these things. So I'm like, okay, how do I make it easy for everybody?
You're really good at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I do have probably a last one. Sorry for talking too much again. We women are very good at emotional intelligence, because we have to say, emotionally, we are very strong compared to the men, which, of course, they're physically strong. But oftentimes, I think if we don't balance it out, again, goes back to our emotions. We really need to know when to blow up, when to hold back. We really need to master our emotions when it comes to when we are actively participating in terms of leadership and in terms of decision making, because there is a saying in my society: leave the kitchen stuff to the kitchen to the kitchen, and don't tell whatever happened in your house or kitchen to the public. So yeah, it's just a kind of a little bit of a phrase that we use. Yeah, just probably a little bit of remark from my end.
Whitney, really quickly, can we add equal relationship? I mean, what you've already written with this, can we add equal opportunities as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done, team. I think we're about 15 seconds away from joining the main room.
Good luck, Sophie, again.
Oh my goodness. All right, thank you, lady.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I see your feminist future scenarios, which look fantastic. So we've come to the end of the workshop. We've got just 10 minutes left. So what I wanted to do to finish up, rather than doing a direct report back on these scenarios, because I think, you know, we've got them captured on the board. Hopefully you can see them. We'll share them as well at the end of the session. I've been reading as you've been typing, and they're really interesting. So what I'd like to do to close is just open up to reflections from anyone in the group about something you've heard today that makes you more hopeful about the future. And I can share something first. Something that makes me more hopeful and something that I really enjoy about this methodology is that the way that you use the starting point of one trend and end up talking about quite a different issue. So, you know, the pink team here started with the trend of accelerating racial justice and ended up talking about, you know, ecosystems with nature and balancing human and non-human life on the planet, which I think is I really enjoy, and I find it really hopeful, this this way that we can sort of start talking about one issue, but identify all these ways that the things we care about are really interconnected, and making progress on one issue is going to help us achieve these other ones. So I'll just open it up for people to share something that you've heard today that makes you more hopeful about the future.
If I can be the first, maybe.
Please.
What makes me hopeful is that I think the methodology in itself sort of demonstrates that if everyone has the power to actually imagine their own future or collective future, then I think a better world is obviously feasible in the future. So the power that we have to imagine the future itself is what makes me hopeful. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess what makes me hopeful is this idea that we can really stretch our imaginations to places that we're not typically used to going, especially in white Australian culture, where we like to tell ourselves that the way that things are the best they could possibly be, and that there's no need to actually imagine. And I think hearing Sophie speak before about weaving people's lived experience and women's lived experience, particularly those who come from different cultural backgrounds, into this imagining process actually opens up so many different options that we haven't thought of. And going down that rabbit hole is super exciting for me. I think there's a lot there that we can grab onto and run with.
Thank you. Who else would like to share?
I'll probably say something on behalf of my green team, because I know they're probably shy. We all agree. We'll probably have to say something. One thing that stands out for our group, again, coming from different cultural background and having privilege to be interacting with people from all walks of life in this platform, we point out gender stereotype in our communities. We see a future where we are now breaking barriers and cultural norms and gender stereotype that a woman belongs to the kitchen, a woman belongs to raising up a child, a woman is the homemaker. Whereas we're looking at a woman, regardless if in that aspect, we can still make an impact. We can still contribute together with our menfolk. And when you say menfolk, that includes our brothers, our husbands, our fathers, our grandfathers. And that is one thing that we've seen, that there is a future for us women. And again, COVID-19 has brought that opportunity for us women. And we also look at equal opportunity. Women are now given more equal opportunity to participate, not only in decision making, but other developmental perspective as well. Also, we looked at the power dynamics. We're looking at how men used to take the upper hand in family, in community, in society. It's now changing. The landscape is changing because women are now putting the foot in the door and say, hey, look, we can also participate. We can also make a difference if only you give us the opportunity and support. So that's what we're looking at, the future that is possible. And also we're looking at women. We're now using that natural ability of being multi-skilled, and we are drawing from it. And we are now using it in a lot of platforms, in a lot of aspects. May it be in our family, community, or international perspective. As long as you give us the opportunity, we can. And finally, we're looking at if there is more opportunity given where women can play equal roles in decision making, we see women rising up to the challenge and taking that initiative, because there are a lot of like-minded women out there that, even though regardless of our social status, whether we're educated or not, we are now supporting each other to make a difference. So that's from our green team and from our different cultural background as well. We see that there is the future look goods for women participation. we're not trying, it's not a women movement, we're trying to take over the man leadership. No, it's just that you give us an opportunity to lead and make decision alongside with you. And that's where we are. We're just like you, we want to make a difference as well. So thank you. That is from the Green Team. Thank you so much.
That's great. I love that idea of, you know, rather than thinking of women as vulnerable or marginalized, thinking about the strengths that women have and the things that they bring to the table as real assets. I really like that as a hopeful idea. Any other reflections on things that made you hopeful, either from your discussion or from something you've heard from another group? If not, we can bring the workshop to a close there. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time today, for joining us, for bringing your ideas, your analysis. It's really great. It's really powerful to see what we've been able to co-create together from all of the different perspectives that have been here in the workshop today. It's I've run quite a few of these sessions, and it's really fascinating the different outcomes and different ideas that we get to from, you know, having a different group of people with diverse perspectives. So thanks so much for your time and for being part of it. Thanks heaps to Whitney and to the RDI team for organising the conference and for having this session as part of it. Just a reminder, I'll share a PDF of the Miro board with everyone, and I'll be reporting back on this session as part of the RDI conference. And I'll just do a plug, which is that all of this is freely available. So there's a link in the Miro board where you can download a facilitator's guide, which has all the instructions that you would need to run one of these workshops. IWDA can give you access to the Miro board. So if you're interested in, you know, if you've had a great time and you'd like to run one of these workshops yourself, you know, with your organization or with another network or community, you can download the facilitator's guide there, and please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I should also say we have a version translated in Khmer for our Cambodian friends. So if you're interested in that, it's not on the website, but you can just send us an email and I can share that with you as well. So we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, everyone, for your time today again. And yeah, and go forward into a feminist future.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you, everybody. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at the rest of the 2021 RDI Network Conference. See you there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.